Hey, Brian, if we could bring one character from another podcast to this podcast, you know who I'd pick?
Who's that?
That Matt guy from Movies on a Monday. I think it would be really fun to have him on this podcast.
I was just thinking, like we literally did this last week because I was on your podcast and Terrence was on our podcast.
That's true. We did a crossover episode last week, but this week it's just Brian and I. Welcome to TV Guys. As I said, I'm Matt.
As established, I'm Brian.
And established in the canon lore of our podcast. And this is the first week in 3 weeks that we do not have a guest, but that's okay. We love our guests, but we love each other too.
Do we?
Well, we tolerate each other.
We love you, the guests. We just do this for you.
We do. We force ourselves to talk to each other and see each other. We don't have to do this in a video chat, but we do because we just want that experience. And
it's like, yeah, it's like when you find out that like two people who were like really good friends on a show like hate each other in real life.
That's not how this is. I don't want anyone walking away. We do like each other. We are friends, weirdly enough. It's strange, I know, but we are.
Yeah.
Now, Terrence and I, on the other hand, just kidding. I don't think Terrence listens to this. I'm going to be honest. I don't think he listens to movies.
I don't think so.
Guys.
I don't think so either. And I'll admit that with Movies on a Monday, it depends on what you're talking about.
And that's fair. I mean, we even have people who listen that, you know, they've reached out to us and like, I love your show. I don't listen to everyone. That's fine. You don't have to listen to everyone. If you've never watched Squid Game, why would you listen to the Squid Game episode? It doesn't make sense. But this episode, on the other hand, I hope you're listening to because it's going to be great. So we've seen some like crossovers on TV shows before. Mm-hmm. Back in like the 90s, NBC was like, we need to cross over our shows all the time. So you saw like George Clooney from ER pop up in Friends as George Clooney from ER. And you saw like Carolyn in the City, like they had some crossover episodes. It was just they drop characters left and right. Like, hey, look at all the shows we have here on NBC. Well, and watch any of these.
Phoebe herself was kind of a crossover because before Friends, Lisa Kudrow was Ursula on Mad About You. And then they made Friends, and then they made the two characters sisters. And they brought in Mad About You to Friends as well. And then there was you remember the Blackout episode of Friends, right?
Season 1. I do remember the episode.
Yeah. That night, all of the shows on NBC, I think they were all New York shows. I think Seinfeld was one of them as well. They all had blackouts in New York. So it's supposedly like the same night you're seeing what everybody's doing during the blackout.
Really? I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
That's clever. I think that's fun. But we've seen it. We even saw it with more recent shows when they did the crossover with New Girl and Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah. Well, and one that I was going to bring up. So in the 90s, these TGIF family sitcoms, they kind of hinged on Steve Urkel. Okay? Steve Urkel was in...
Which that shouldn't be the case. No one should have to put all of their eggs in the Steve Urkel basket.
Steve Urkel was in like a whole episode of Step by Step, and talking about like how him and Mark were doing the science fairs. Like, well, you live in Chicago, they're in Wisconsin. Why are you still here? And then Steve Urkel also showed up in San Francisco and did a whole episode of Full House. At one point on Family Matters, Urkel mentioned having a pen pal, Corey Matthews, in Philadelphia. And then on Boy Meets World, this was another one. The Boy Meets World Disney World episode aired right after the Step by Step Disney World episode, and Dana from Step by Step shows up in the Boy Meets World episode. Like they're all interconnected.
Yeah. Speaking of Full House, now it's at this point it's been a week and a half since Bob Saget died. But
and we also haven't mentioned Betty White dying as well. So two TV legends.
Yeah. I said, like, when people I was talking to with Betty White, it's just nuts that she played an old lady 40 years ago. Yeah. It's crazy. And yet, like, 40 years later, she was still doing fine until right before her 100th birthday. I think 100th birthday is in a couple days from when we're recording, right?
Something like that, yeah. So about those, all we have to say is everywhere you look, thank you for being a friend.
There you go. I figured you'd want to make some sort of tribute or reference to him. So but he and I had the same birthday. So
Bob Saget and you?
Yep, Bob Saget and I had the same birthday.
Nice.
I also have the same birthday as Bill Paxton, who's also dead. So
This is the third time you've brought up your celebrity birthday buddies on the podcast.
I know, but now they're like, who do I got that's still alive? I don't know. I'll have to look it up. But I think actually one of the Williams sisters, I think I might share a birthday with. I think. Anyway, so getting back on topic, what we're talking about today, we are talking about crossovers, but we're talking about, in our eyes, who we would want to see crossover. So it's pretty much if you took one character out of a show, just one, and you put this character in another show, who would you pick? What would that look like? I've got like 7 ones that I kind of bumped into, and I was like, oh, these would all be pretty fun. So we'll go back and forth and go pretty quick through them so that we get through these in a timely fashion.
Well, I have 3.
So I've got more. So I'll start. Yeah. So this is one that my first one that I thought of. I had a couple different ways to go about this. One of them was like, I was like, okay, well, what are 2 TV shows that are similar genres? And what could I do there? And then I thought, after I did a couple of those, I thought, what are some really good characters that I love? And put them into another show. Mm-hmm. And so, I was like, where would they fit best?
Yeah.
So person that I love, it's both. He's the genre and who I love. And it's a real person here too. So recently, earlier this month, we got news that Joe Gatto was leaving Impractical Jokers. But you know what that leaves him time for? Going on Survivor. Would that not be the best season of Survivor ever?
Well, okay. I get where you're coming from this, but Joe would not last past the merge. We'd get maybe a couple episodes with Joe, and then it would depend on everybody else. He wouldn't make the whole season.
Joe is so lovable. I think he would stick around for a while, but he definitely, with the lack of pastries that he wouldn't be able to get to, he would probably keel over and die.
He would also be an absolute liability in team challenges.
Maybe, but he could also completely distract the other team, and they'll be like, what the heck is this guy doing? He's dancing around the scoop ski potatoes. And they're just like, I can't even do this anymore.
And God forbid there's someone named Larry on the season.
Every single vote, you just hear him while like everyone's like waiting and he's casting his vote. You just hear him off the distance, Larry. Like, well, we know who Joe's voting today.
It would never happen, but I would watch that. I mean, I watch Survivor anyway, so that's not really a draw. But
that's my only real person on a show. The others are all characters.
I have one. My number one is actually a fictional character I would put into the real world. So there's a tease there.
Okay. So go ahead and give us one of your picks.
All right. Well, that one I want to save for my number one. But one of my picks, and this is a character I think you could pop him into so many different shows, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's on one of your lists. Do you have any with the janitor from Scrubs?
I don't, but he is definitely a great character.
I think a great scenario, a great environment for him would be if he was a janitor at Greendale Community College in Community.
That is a good pick. I fully appreciate this pick.
Like I can't decide if he would pick on the dean or if he would egg the dean on with all of his shenanigans, and I can't decide who his like JD would be, who his JD would be, who would be the one that he would relentlessly torture. I'm thinking maybe like Jeff or Annie.
I feel like it would be Troy. I don't know why. I just feel like Troy could be a lightning bolt. I don't even have a reason behind thinking that. It's just like
I guess
Troy's young and he's easy to pick on, I think.
But I could also see Janitor getting in on some of Troy and Abed shenanigans.
Yeah. I think personality-wise, I think Annie's probably the closest to JD.
Yeah. That's why I said Jeff or Annie.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking also, there's that scene in Scrubs where he like gathered all like the support cast. I could see him like rallying like Neil and Garrett and Starburns and all like the extra superfluous people around the school and be like, well, we're the study group now.
His right hand would absolutely be Leonard.
Yes. Or Garrett.
Garrett would be a part of the brain trust, but I think Leonard would be like the number 2 guy.
Yeah. True.
That is a great pick.
Yeah, I have nothing more to say about it. But yeah, just janitor on Community. There's so many different things you could do with that.
All right. So speaking of really good characters that you want to see in something else, I thought of I love Ron Swanson. I could watch him in any show. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I think I would put Ron Swanson on Tool Time, the show from Home Improvement that Tim is host of.
I like that.
A replacement to Al, because again, Ron knows exactly what he's doing. Ron is also pretty no nonsense. So Tim has a lot of funny lines, and Al is the straight man to those funny lines. But I think Ron as a straight man adds so much to every scene he's in, and that he would be the funniest version of a straight man for a Tool Time episode.
I think he would keep Al's catchphrase of "I don't think so, Tim." I feel like that also fits with Ron.
It really does. Yes.
Yeah. I can see Tim trying to make something, and all of a sudden he goes through the whole thing. It comes out crappy, and then you didn't even know that Ron was doing anything, and all of a sudden well, I made this, and it's the perfectly manicured version of everything.
You'd also get a lot more making fun of Tim, because Al didn't mock Tim that much, because he in a way he knew his place, and so he would have a back and forth, but he wouldn't straight out insult Tim. Whereas I think Ron, you'd get after the end of each episode, or when Tim would suggest something, Ron would be like, "That is stupid, and the worst way to do that. Here's a better way to do it." Call him out every single time.
Mm-hmm. Also, there's got to be a scene where Tim takes Ron back to his house, and they both get advice from Wilson, because I want to see, because Wilson is the opposite of Ron. Wilson's all about spiritual, new agey, quoting all the different history stuff, and Ron's just I can see him just hating it, this is stupid, just do this, and just being so matter of fact and on the surface, whereas Wilson's all about the metaphors.
Yeah, I think that I didn't even think of that dynamic, but that would be a really fun thing to see.
Yeah. All right, you want to do another one of yours since you have more than me?
Sounds good. All right, let's flash back a couple decades here.
Okay.
So there was a TV show in the 60s called Bewitched that I watched as a kid. I really liked, but the whole idea is this guy named Darren marries Samantha, who actually ends up being a witch, and doesn't know that, and they trying to live this happy suburban life, but his wife has the secret where she has magic powers and she can change things around with magic, and that often creates these shenanigans. Mm-hmm. Well, let's pretend that Darren and Samantha, specifically Darren, stumbles across this bottle and opens it, and inside is Jeannie from I Dream of Jeannie, who is a very similar, these shows, Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie, were extremely similar. I would love to see a love triangle type, and it doesn't even have to be love, because it's just Jeannie's you're the master, I'm here to grant your wishes and all that sort of stuff, but it can still be off-putting to Samantha and make her jealous. I don't know exactly how that dynamic would play out over multiple seasons, but I'd be interested to see the competition of Sam magic and Jeannie magic, and Darren being this poor guy who has no power, stuck in the middle of these two very powerful women, and being at the whims of all of their whatever insanity that would ensue. I think that could be fun.
I think you're describing a Jerry Springer episode.
It's probably with decidedly less magic. Yeah. There's something magical about the Jerry Springer set.
It makes me think about there's episodes where there's the two gorgeous women, they're fighting over a guy who's got one tooth, no job, and they're why do you want this guy? They're two magical beings, and it's just some guy. Why are you fighting over this Darren dude?
Yeah, you realize there's a whole nother Darren, right? They got rid of him, but he still exists. He's alive somewhere.
They could just each have their own.
Exactly. Collect the whole set. I don't know what that means.
I can't speak too much because I haven't seen, and I mean, obviously I'm aware of these shows, but I haven't seen enough of them to really comment on them.
So apparently the original Darren, though, he got replaced because he had this major back injury. I don't know exactly how much it was, but it was impacting his ability to be on the show. And they simply are okay, well, we're just replace you. We're going to recast Darren, which was just nuts. Like, and they're like, oh no, it's the exact same show, same character, just different person.
Yeah.
You didn't do that back then. So everyone's
No.
like, what are you doing? This is clearly a different looking person.
See, now there's so many examples. We did a whole episode on it, and it's so common that we kind of don't bat an eye at it anymore.
That's true.
All right. So I'm going to go with my next pick. I haven't seen the new season, but Cobra Kai is a really interesting show and deals with a lot of violence, a lot of people who realistically should need legal representation. Do you see where I'm going with this?
You cut out for a moment.
Oh,
what was the show you're talking about?
Cobra Kai. So in Cobra Kai, interesting show. People need legal representation. Yep. Bring in, whether you want to call him Jimmy McGill or Saul Goodman, as their lawyer.
That is interesting. I'd thought of Cobra Kai, of bringing someone into the Cobra Kai universe, but I couldn't land on someone. This is a good pick too.
And I can't decide if you would be like Johnny's lawyer or Daniel's lawyer or both, and just going back and forth between the two of them.
Mm-hmm. I feel like even though as much as we love Jimmy and Better Call Saul, I think he would be on Kreese's side.
Probably. I
mean, he also is a mini mall guy or a strip mall sort of guy. They might be neighbors.
Well, also, Jimmy McGill is very much a survivalist. I feel like he'll go with whoever will keep him in business.
Yeah.
Because he went to the Elder Law. He ended up liking the Elder Law in the beginning, but that's all he could do at the beginning. And then when that all went south and he had to tank his career there, then he started working with the drug dealers, and then that's transitioned him into Saul Goodman. Mm-hmm. So I think he would go with any of them because he's not really on anyone's side. He's always kind of just permanently on his own side.
Yeah. Yeah. In Breaking Bad, we definitely got like the cockroach side of him where it's like he's surviving no matter what. Mm-hmm. He's going to make it, but he just knows how to play his cards to do that. Whereas we get a lot more understanding of who he is in Better Call Saul. So I think it would be fun to see because he also has the over the top demeanor and the ridiculousness that would fit a personality of Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
He would fit in really well. Mm-hmm. I think you're right.
Yeah. All right. So how many more do you have left?
So I've got, let me see, 1, 2, 3. I got 4 more. So I'll give you 2 more.
Okay.
All right. So in a similar vein, though, I was thinking of this character for Cobra Kai because it's like, oh, there's all this fighting. I was like, well, I like a character from the Netflix Marvel shows, The Punisher. John Bernthal was cast very well as the Punisher. And so it's like, well, where would you drop a no-holds-bar guy, like ex-Marine, that can hold his own in every single fight he's in, that is violent and doesn't hold back? And I'm like, it's a little dark to put him in Cobra Kai, but he would work really well as another prisoner in the show Prison Break. I think put Punisher in Prison Break, that show immediately gets about 10% better at least. Mm-hmm. Even the 3rd and 4th season, you'd be like, I don't care. John Bernthal's still here and he's still killing people and smashing their skulls. And I love it. But he's also very smart. He's a good tactician, but he, kind of keeps to himself. So he would be an absolute benefit for the group in the first season and what he would bring to the group and being able to contribute without having to like take over and be leader. He's just kind of wanting to do his time and gets like roped into the stuff that they're doing. And then he becomes this force to be reckoned with. I think there's a lot of potential you can do with him on that show.
I haven't seen Daredevil, but the way you're describing him, I think that would really work with Prison Break because Prison Break is a really intense show. I mean, people forget, like, was it the season 1 finale or the season 2 premiere where just out of nowhere they chopped T-Bag's hand off? It's like, that's the kind of show this is.
Yes. Yes, they did. Like, oh, he doesn't need that. He's fine.
And then that became a character trait of him for the rest of the series.
I like vaguely remember that. Prison Break, I remember the first season super well. I remember parts of the 3rd season, and I remember even less parts of the 2nd and 4th season.
Yeah. The 4th season had Michael Rappaport.
Who's that again?
He's been in a bunch of stuff. One thing I think, he was the cop in Friends who shot a bird and
Phoebe
broke up with him. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, he's been in a lot of stuff. He just pops up. He's like, I'm here for about 10 lines, and then I'm out.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. See you later,
All
Mike. All right. So another one then would be, this is another one where I'm like, it's kind of like a no-brainer and it's almost a boring pick, but I definitely would watch it if this was on. But so many people talk about Star Trek versus Star Wars. But I'm like, what if you take The Mandalorian and you throw him really in any Star Trek show? Because Star Trek itself is all a lot more philosophical and a lot more like speaking on culture and stuff like that. It's not like an action show, and it was never supposed to be an action show. And that kind of fits what you could do with the Mandalorian character, because he's a reluctant hero. Yeah, you're going to expect some fight scenes. You're going to expect some chase, that sort of stuff from Mandalorian. But I think you could really get into some strong minutiae of what his job is and what his goal is with Grogu and how a Federation could help him take care of this. I think that would be an interesting show to watch, or interesting episode to watch. But, it's Star Trek and Star Wars. It's kind of like this paints itself. Yeah. I think everyone's been wanting to do Star Trek and Star Wars at some point in their life.
But also, remember, so exposing myself again that I'm not a Star Trek guy. When you say Star Trek, it's kind of a utopian society where everything's kind of like everything's perfect kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the contrast of the Mandalorian, where he comes from like ruined society where he has to scrap to survive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that would be an interesting mix.
Thank you. I thought so.
And plus, wouldn't it be an interesting, because with his whole moral legalistic, this is the way, having a conversation about that with Spock would be interesting.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's great to see, because it's like that's one thing that Star Trek does really well is they have entire people groups represent or entire species of alien represent either different people groups or different ways of thinking or different whatever. And so to have Mandalorian come from this other very specific way of thinking to challenge different races that they've bumped into, I think that there's a lot you can do with it.
All right.
In terms of like blind faith sort of following and all that.
All right. So my last pick, I talked about bringing someone into the real world. This isn't my favorite show, but it's interesting every now and then. I'm sure you've maybe heard of or seen Shark Tank.
Yep.
So this character could either be a shark or they could be like pitching something to the shark. Give me Jean-Ralphio Saperstein from Parks and Rec. Interacting with the sharks on Shark Tank.
Someone's pitching an idea. That idea is the worst.
Or if it's literally the worst, he's like, "This is awesome. Let's do it. We're all." And they're like, "What do you mean? This is and it's just like I can't play out the scenario. Like everyone can be mad at him. Like, this is a terrible investment. We're supposed to, It's like, no, I don't care. I'm going to do it.
I created my own poop flavored candle. Love it, baby. I'm in. I want to give you $2 million for 0%. I'll take it. So the shark's like, what are you doing? You're not going to make any money from this. I don't care. It's about getting it out there.
And then he would start hitting on like Barbara Corcoran.
Hey, girl, what's up?
Hey, Barbara Boo.
He gets forcibly removed.
He hits on Barbara Corcoran and then turns over to Mark Cuban. He's like, "You're pretty handsome yourself, man."
Dude, him and Mr. Wonderful would just be like so antagonistic completely. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a fun pick.
Yeah.
All right. So I thought of someone from a BBC show. So the Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch and with Martin Freeman. If you took Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock and put him in Brooklyn as part of the 9-9 and make him a detective there, or even like a freelance consultant, he's got like such a serious demeanor, but he's super smart. I would love to see his interactions with Holt. I'd love to see his interactions with Peralta and just like how he would be with the absurdity of the rest of this squad, because he is absurd in and of himself, but he's a very serious kind of absurd. Yeah. Whereas like all of these other people, like, oh, goofy, like over the top. I want to see him like do really awesome, but also at the same time just like tick everyone off with like
Yeah.
how meticulous he is about crap.
It'd be kind of like that episode they brought in J.K. Simmons.
Which one was that?
They brought
I remember he was in.
He was supposed to be this great detective that Holt knew, and then he ended up like it looked like he was solving everything, but then at the end, it turns out that he like got his license revoked, and he's like working at a yarn barn.
Oh yeah, yes, that's right.
Also, I just imagine Sherlock in the 9-9. I don't know why, as you're talking, this exact bit of dialogue came up. He's, you know, they're going back and forth as to how great he is. Then Hitchcock comes in. If you're so great, maybe you can find who took my Twinkie. And he's like, it's in your left hand. He is a genius.
That is 100% accurate dialogue. You've given a great. Why aren't you a writer, Brian? You could do that.
I should be. I'll exclusively write for John Ralphio Hitchcock.
Just those guys. That's it. A duet between those. That would be the worst show. Those two together. I don't care what the plot is. Whatever they come up with, that's the worst.
I'd rather watch The Farm with Dwight Schrute than that.
Yes. Yeah. Which, I mean, the fake pilot episode wasn't so bad. I could have seen that show being okay.
Yeah. Which makes me think like, you know, that's what's called a backdoor pilot, which I don't like that term because it just sounds dirty.
Yeah. Yep. I got no follow up there.
They did one of those in Gilmore Girls. They were going to spin off Milo's character.
They did that in Grey's Anatomy, and it actually succeeded in creating Private Practice.
And isn't that how all the different CSIs branched off from the regular CSI?
I don't think so, because I think they're just like, oh, CSI is successful, let's do a spinoff. And they did have crossover one. I know for sure they did one with CSI New York and CSI Miami.
Well, I know
that they did that.
Well, I know Miami started with an episode of either they were on an episode of the regular CSI or all the CSI people were on their pilot episode.
Gotcha. Maybe they did a backdoor pilot with CSI Miami, and then by that point they already had two. They're like, we don't need to do another one. Let's just launch a CSI New York. Let's get Gary Sinise. Everyone loves Gary Sinise. You can't not like Gary Sinise.
Yeah. But going back to Sherlock on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I think him and Holt would be good too, because like he would start to actually like outperform and like kind of almost turn on Holt's. And where at the beginning, I think Holt would be a total fanboy.
Yeah, I feel like with Holt, yeah, that's a good idea of like Holt being a fanboy and like having his perception of him ruined, because Sherlock is a jerk. Sherlock is terrible, and he's like, I'm better than you, and like that would completely rub every single person in the 9-9 the wrong way. Except Gina wouldn't believe it. She'd be like, no, I'm better. Like Gina would belittle him all the time. I feel like she would be the one that would get the better of Sherlock like every time if there was anyone in there who could.
And then if they brought in John Watson, like he could be commenting with maybe Terry, like him and Terry be like, are they always like this?
My other one that I have it's essentially a very similar premise, but it would be a very dark turn of this, is if you took Alf and you put him on the X-Files. I was trying to think of like taking Mulder from the X-Files, who's like, I'll believe all this sort of other stuff, and like putting him in like a Star Trek or something like that, where aliens are real or supernatural things are real or Stranger Things or whatever. But I think if you instead keep the X-Files world and you take Alf, who the whole idea is like Alf is trying to blend in and hide from the government. He's an alien kind of on the loose, but it's a lot more severe stakes in X-Files because you've got the smoking man and you've got like actual government people that are trying to find these strange things and trying to use them and silence them and all that sort of stuff. So there actually is conspiracy stuff woven deep into the X-Files lore. And so you throw Alf in there, I think that would be a really interesting show because he's so goofy and he's like the sitcom world. And all of a sudden it's like this very dark world is like, you are going to get taken apart and like dissected, and you are like, bad things are really actually going to happen to you. They're not going to hold back in this real place.
That would be cool. I just thought of another Alf one we could do. Talking about aliens blending in. Alf could have been on an episode of Third Rock from the Sun. They could have all kinds of shenanigans. At the end, Alf leaves or something, and then at the very end, they're saying like, now we don't have to have. It's easier to hide now. There's no other aliens. And then as that happens, emerging up from behind the couch would be the Yip Yip Martians from Sesame Street,
or Mork from Mork and Mindy.
Oh, I totally forgot about him. I went to the Yip Yip Martians from Sesame Street before I went to Mork.
I mean, you need to reevaluate your life choices, obviously.
Well, I grew up with them. I didn't grow up with Mork. He's before my time.
Who would be the best character from TV to throw into either the Muppets or Sesame Street or some Jim Henson project?
Ooh, I purposely left them out. Let me see. TV character.
House.
Yep. House? Oh, that would be
good. You have the House Hospital, and then he's surrounded by Muppets. Because he kind of acts like that. He acts like everyone's pretty much a Muppet anyway.
Pretty much. That or the Dean from Community would be good.
Dean would blend in. Dean himself is a human Muppet.
It's hard to do because with both those properties, they've done so many. Like there was a Star Wars Muppets crossover. People forget about that. Like they've done that so many times already.
They have.
Mm-hmm.
I like in the Muppets movie with Jason Segel and Amy Adams how Sheldon is the human form of Walter.
Yeah,
that was a great cameo.
That was a good reveal. I didn't know that was coming until I saw it in the theaters.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't seen it, that's my favorite Muppets movie is the Jason Segel Muppets. I know that's what you're not like fourth or fifth.
I think it's number 5. Yeah, number 5. But that's just because it's also a really good movie. And that's just because most of the Muppet movies are really great.
Look at that.
To me, it just can't beat the original.
Agree to disagree. But that is. Did you have anything else that you thought of?
No, that's all. That's all mine.
Sounds good. Well, hey, we have got trivia from a couple weeks ago. Now we did have our special crossover episode last week with Terrence from Movies on a Monday where we talked about Hawkeye. If you haven't listened to that, go listen to that. But 2 weeks ago we had Paul on who we talked about Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And so Brian, what was your trivia from that?
My trivia was regarding the heist. Every Halloween episode they do a big heist to see who can win whatever object. And I said, what 2 main characters have never won a heist? So I'm going to go down the list. First year, Jake won. Second year, Holt won. Third year, Amy won. Fourth year, Gina won. Fifth year, nobody won because it was when Jake proposed, although Jake, Amy, and Holt all claim they won that one. And then sixth year, Terry won. Seventh year, Rosa won. Eighth year, out of nowhere, Hitchcock came back and won, leaving the only 2 who never won a heist, Charles Boyle and Norm Scully.
You know who would actually even make more sense to have won the heist at the end instead of Hitchcock?
Who?
Not Boyle. I mean, yeah, I guess it would have made sense if Boyle would have won. Doug Judy, out of nowhere.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yep. I know that they did a Pontiac Bandit send-off they did a Pontiac Bandit send-off episode in the final season, but I think if we would have done that would have been good.
Or Wunsch, and if she found that she faked her death.
That would also be good. I would love it out of left field. I mean, Hitchcock was out of left field.
Yeah.
But I think one of those other ones would have worked really well.
Yeah. Or CJ or Adrian Pimento.
Oh, yes. Adrian Pimento. I don't even know how I have this. Like he wins through sheer accident. I mean, that's how Hitchcock won, was sheer accident. But
I think this shows how many great characters on the show that we keep listing characters and everyone's like amazing.
Yeah, very good characters on that show. You're right.
Yeah.
So speaking of great characters, if you haven't watched the BBC Sherlock series, I liked it a lot. Some people didn't like the final seasons, which by the way, also each BBC seasons are like 2 or 3 episodes. I don't understand it. I don't know what you're doing over there, Britain. I don't get it, but whatever. Anyway, if you haven't watched Sherlock, go watch it. It's a great show. I love it a lot, especially if you like mysteries. It's really good. But Martin Freeman and Benedict Cumberbatch, they were of course in Sherlock together. They were of course in the Marvel Cinematic Universe together. what other franchise did these two appear in as well?
All right.
And we have not heard back from people about trivia. We keep doing these trivia things, and people are like, I know the answer. And then they keep it to themselves. And we haven't heard answers from people in a little bit.
When we first started the podcast, we would get some texts from people saying, I know this is, and then they just kind of stopped.
Yeah. So if you know the answer, reach out to us. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter at TV Guys 1. We have our cell phones. I know a lot of people that listen to us also know like our phone numbers and our personal Facebooks, and they've reached out that way.
We also have an email at tvguyspodcast@gmail.com.
True. And if we don't hear from you guys, we'll just assume that you don't know things, and that'll make us sad. So don't make us sad.
Do you think they care about your sadness?
I think they do. If your life is not revolved around my state of emotional bliss, then you've got problems, guys. It's clearly about me. Obviously. Right, Brian?
That's the quote of Matt's autobiography. It's clearly all about me.
Title of my sex tape. Well, that should do it for the day. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.
See, that was a well-earned title of my sex tape. Unlike that time you tried to manufacture it, That's What She Said.
I would never do that. You know how hard that is?
Respect the game.